But first and foremost, let's get into the news, folks. Yes, nearly 1 in 10 of America's unionized auto workers went on strike last Friday to pressure Detroit's 3 automakers into raising wages in an era of big profits, as the industry has begun a costly transition from gas guzzlers to electric vehicles. By striking simultaneously at General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler owner Stellantis. That's what tripped me up, Stellantis. But yeah, Stellantis is Chrysler now, y'all. For the first time in its history, the United Auto Workers Union is trying to inflict a new kind of pain on those companies and get back. And this is the important part. They've got to get back some of the pay and benefits that they gave up to help these companies stay in business during the recession, during 2008 recession. The union president, Shawn Fain, has said that workers could strike at more plant if companies don't come up with better offers. The workers are seeking an across-the-board wage of 36% over 4 years. The companies have countered by offering increases ranging from 17.5% to 20%. So I'm going to let Mr. Shawn Fain talk to you guys for himself. This is a man with the plan, and he ain't messing around.
Hey UAW family, last week we announced the launch of the Stand Up strike. I want to give a major shout out to the thousands of members who are on the picket line right now fighting for all of us. For the first time in our union's history, we're on strike at all 3 of the big 3. The Stand Up strike is a new approach to striking. Instead of striking all plants all at once, select locals will be called on to stand up and walk out on strike. This is our generation's answer to the movement that built our union, the sit-down strikes of 1937. Then as now, we face massive inequality across our society. Then as now, our industry is rapidly changing and workers are being left behind. Then as now, our labor movement is redefining itself. The big 3 have made over $250 billion in North American profits over the last 10 years. They've made $21 billion in profits in the first half of this year. The big 3 CEOs have increased their already massive salaries by an average of 40% over the last 4 years, while the companies have poured billions into stock buybacks and special dividends to enrich Wall Street. Car companies are fleecing consumers right now. In the past 4 years, the average price of a new car is up 30%. You think UAW wages are driving that increase? Think again. Our pay has risen a mere 6% over the last 4 years. Due to inflation, an auto worker today is making less in real wages than we made 20 years ago. That's why we have chosen to stand up. We're taking a stand against corporate greed. We're taking a stand against inequality. And we're taking a stand to end tears, to win back cost of living allowance, to raise wages, and to protect our communities from plant closures. We told the big 3 that September 14th was a deadline, and we meant it. We gave the companies our economic demands 8 weeks ago. It took them more than a month to get to the table. We had to file federal charges against 2 of them at the Labor Board to get them to start bargaining in good faith. Our members have been clear about our demands, and we know the companies can afford to make things right. Record profits mean record contracts. We've been available 24/7 to bargain a deal that recognizes our members' sacrifices and contributions to these record profits. Still, the Big Three failed to get down to business. That's why last week, our brave union family at Wentzville Assembly, Toledo Assembly, and Final Assembly and Paint Departments at Michigan Assembly were called on to stand up and go out on strike. And that's exactly what they did. Just as importantly, all the rest of you stayed on the job. That is the only way this strategy works. We're going to keep hitting the company where we need to, when we need to. And we're not going to keep waiting around forever while they drag this out. I have been clear with the Big Three every step of the way, and I'm going to be crystal clear again right now. If we don't make serious progress by noon on Friday, September 22nd, more locals will be called on to stand up and join the strike. That will mark more than a week since our first members walked out. And that will mark more than a week of the Big Three failing to make progress in negotiations toward reaching a deal that does right by our members. Auto workers have waited long enough to make things right at the Big Three. We're not waiting around, and we're not messing around. So noon on Friday, September 22nd is a new deadline. Either the Big Three get down to business and work with us to make progress in negotiations, or more locals will be called on to stand up and go out on strike. Between now and then, UAW members will keep organizing actions, those on strike will remain on strike, and those on the job will keep monitoring for unilateral changes made by management which are not allowed under an expired contract. Keep organizing rallies, keep organizing red shirt days, keep up the energy, and keep showing to companies that you are ready to join the strike if necessary. This is our generation's defining moment, so be ready to stand up.
Whew, I heard that. I'm with you, Sean. As for an update on this story, some facilities distribution facilities in Chicago suburbs have now joined the picket. As he said, if they didn't act right by September 22nd, that is today, that they would that they would have more workers go on strike. And so the UAW expanded its strike to 38 parts and distribution centers in 20 states for General Motors and Stellantis, formerly Chrysler, including facilities in the Chicago suburbs. The added distribution centers provide parts for General Motors, Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler's. Approximately 5,625 additional workers will join the strike, including 87 who walked off the job in a GM plant in Bolingbrook and 92 at the Stellantis facility in Naperville, Illinois. So, you know, that is that's going on. That's up to date right now as we speak. That happened today. But who is Shawn Fain? I think it's important to know he's a Hoosier. Yes, he's one of us. He was an electrician for Chrysler, now Stellantis, in his hometown of Kokomo, Indiana. He became president of the United Auto Workers this year, and he was elected specifically for this moment. I want you guys to know this. He was elected specifically because they know he was ready to go to war with these companies. They did not want the old corrupt auto UAW management that really was taking deals with the big car companies and being paid off. They specifically elected Shawn Fain because they knew he was about that life. Shawn Fain is about that life, and he's showing you he's about that life. So his time with the union began at then Chrysler, now Stellantis plant in 1994. Two of his grandparents were General Motors UAW retirees, and one of his grandfathers also worked at Chrysler. As he said, he always carries one of his grandfather's pay stubs with him to remember where he came from. So again, it is going down because these car companies are not acting right. Workers out on the picket line have said that they hope that the strikes don't last that long. but added that they were committed to the cause and appreciated Fain's tough tactics. In its previous 88-year history, United Auto Workers had always negotiated with one automaker at a time, limiting the industry impact of any possible work stoppages. Each deal with an automaker was viewed as a template, but not a guarantee for subsequent contract negotiations. Now, roughly 13 of the 146,000 workers at the three companies are on strike. Now, even more since today, making life complicated for auto workers' operations while limiting the drain on the union's $825 million strike fund. That's why this was smart. They have an $825 million strike fund to pay the workers who are out on strike, and so they did not want to waste all of it and take them all at once, which would strain the strike fund. If the contract negotiations drag on and the strikes expand to affect more plants, the costs will grow for workers and the companies. Auto dealers could run short of vehicles, raising prices amid and pushing customers to buy from foreign automakers with non-unionized workers. It could also put fresh stress on an economy that's been benefiting from easing inflation. Now, that's nonsense. This is from Associated Press. That's complete nonsense. Where are they talking about easing inflation? Okay, when I go to the grocery store, I go to the grocery store every Wednesday. I ain't seeing any easing inflation. I'm not seeing any easing inflation at the grocery store. So, again, we all know who the media is in the tank for, but that's neither here nor there. The new negotiation tactic is the brainchild of Fain, the first leader in the union's history to be elected directly by the workers. In the past, outgoing leaders picked their replacements by choosing delegates to a convention. That was the corrupt old system. That's how workers kept getting screwed over and over again, because the corrupt United Auto Workers leadership would bow down and capitulate to the big car companies. That's how we ended up in the situation that we're in right now. That system was a system of bribery and embezzlement that ended with a federal investigation that ended in prison time for 2 former UAW presidents. So I'm not lying to you guys. They were corrupt. Now, the combative Fain narrowly won his post last spring with a fiery campaign against that very culture, which he called company unionism, which he said sold out workers by allowing plant closures and failing to extract more money from the automakers. The strikes will largely chart the future of the union and America's homegrown auto industry at a time when U.S. labor is flexing its might and the companies face a historic transition from building internal combustion automobiles to making electric vehicles. You know, as I've said here recently, when we talk about the shift to everybody trying to be green, most of the carbon emissions that are emitted come from 100 companies. About 3/4 of the carbon emissions that are spewed out into the atmosphere come from 100 companies all over the world. 100 companies. They're responsible for 3/4 of it. All the rest of us are responsible for about 1/4 of it. Okay? The military-industrial complex is the biggest polluter on the planet. Single polluter. If the U.S. military was a country, it would be like the 40th most polluting country in the world. 40th or 50th most polluting country in the world. Just the U.S. military alone. Then you have the Chinese Coal Company, and you have Saudi Arabia Aramco. Those entities are responsible for a huge swath, just those 3 companies, of the carbon emissions. Those 3 entities, should I say. So, a lot of the transition to green this and green that, I see these green buses driving around Gary. Let's just be real. That is virtue signaling. A lot of that is just virtue signaling. You know, we're ramping up the war in Ukraine while at the same time making people drive green buses. You know, how many of you knew? Well, if you listen to the show, you would know. But when Joe Biden blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, that was actually the biggest man-made emission of carbon in the history of mankind. Now, you sure you're going to tell me that the Democrats and Joe Biden care about carbon emissions and care about, you know, pollution? So a lot of the EV stuff is, to me, a lot of it's virtue signaling. But that's neither here nor there. Hold on, caller. The walkouts will also be an issue in next year's presidential election, testing Joe Biden's claim to being the most union-friendly president in American history, which in itself is like being the world's tallest midget. It's not like American presidents have been pro-labor. The limited strike strategy could have ripple effects, GM CEO Mary Barra said on Friday on MSNBC. She said, many factories are reliant on each other for part. We have worked to have a very efficient manufacturing network. So yes, even one plant is going to have an impact. Citing strike distributions at its Wayne plant, Ford told about 609 non-striking workers at the plant not to report to work on Friday. Even Fain has called the union's demands audacious, but he said the automakers are raking in billions and can't afford them. He scoffs at companies' claims that cozy settlements would force them to raise vehicle prices because labor only accounts for 4 to 5% of the vehicle cost. These people are going to lay a guilt trip on these workers and say, oh, you're going to have to pay a lot more for cars. The workers only get 4 or 5% of the cost. The rest of that is going to Mary Barra. We're going to see very soon how much money she made. We're going to talk about that in a minute. In addition to the wage increases, union negotiators are also seeking restoration of COLA, the cost of living adjustments, and an end to varying tier of wages for factory jobs, a 32-hour week with 40 hours of pay, a restoration of traditional defined benefit pensions for new hires who now receive only 401k style retirement plans, and pension increases for retirees, amongst other items. Starting in 2007, workers gave up COLA raises, which were the cost of living adjustments, and defined benefit pensions for new hires. Wage tiers were created as the UAW tried to help the companies avoid financial trouble ahead of and during the Great Recession. Even so, only Ford avoided bankruptcy protection. Now it is time to get the concessions back, because the companies are raking in huge profits and CEO pay packages are soaring. Looming in the background is the historic transition to electric vehicles. The union wants to make sure it represents workers at joint venture electric vehicle battery factories. The companies are building so that the members will have jobs making vehicles of the future. Now, the top scale assembly plant workers make about $32 an hour, plus large annual profit sharing checks. Ford said average annual pay, including overtime and bonuses, was about $78,000 last year. The Ford plant that's on strike employs about 3,300 workers. The Toledo Jeep complex that has about 5,800 workers, and GM's Wentzville plant has about 3,600 workers. The union did not go after the company's big cash cows, which are full-size pickup trucks and big SUVs. Automakers say they are facing unprecedented demands as they develop and build new electric vehicles, while at the same time making gas-powered cars, SUVs, and trucks to pay those bills. They're worried that labor costs will rise so much that they'll have to price their cars above those sold by foreign automakers with U.S. factories. That's complete nonsense. You know how I know? Because Mary Barra, who we just talked about, right? She has held the role of CEO of Ford since 2019. She was paid $30 million in 2022. $30 million. The biggest component was $14.62 million in stock grants, which vest over 3 years and whose ultimate value depends on stock performance and other metrics. Her pay has increased 34% since 2019. CEO James Farley from Ford received nearly $21 million in total compensation in 2022, a 25% increase over the $16.76 million that then CEO William Clay Ford received in 2019. His package included $15.14 million in stock awards. Now, Stellantis is a little bit harder to figure out because it is because of the merger. It was formed in 2021 with the merger of Italian-American conglomerate Fiat Chrysler Automobiles and the French PSA Group. It's a European company. So the way Stellantis discloses executive pay differs from General Motors and Ford. In its annual remuneration report, Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares' pay was $23.4 million. That's nearly a 77% increase over Fiat Chrysler CEO Mike Manley's 2019 pay. So these CEOs are taking in historic levels of pay. How are they doing that? How are they doing that? They are doing that with stock buybacks. The car companies have authorized $5 billion in stock buybacks just over the last year. That's it. Now, stock buybacks used to be illegal in this country. You want to guess who made it, who legalized it and who made it legal? You want to guess? I mean, this guy's responsible for most of the bad things in our society, in our country over the last 40 years. But I'm going to give you a few seconds to guess. Well, the devil himself, Ronald Reagan, of course. So stock buybacks have been legal since 1982 when Ronald Reagan, his administration, and them pushed it through. Now, stock buybacks are basically a form of market manipulation. It allows publicly traded companies to prioritize shareholders over workers. Now, over the last decade, the big three automakers have spent $66 billion, not million, billion with a B. $66 billion over the last decade on stock buybacks and dividends over the last decade. That would amount to $440,000 for each of the 150 workers covered by United Auto Workers collective bargaining agreement. Stock buybacks just juice the price of the stock. It doesn't have anything to do with the productivity of the company whatsoever. That's why they were illegal for so long until Ronald Reagan and his corrupt friends made them legal. It's financial engineering. It's a kickback to the executives. And thanks to another one of the worst people in the world, I'll let y'all guess who helped, who brought in the loophole so that they don't have to pay taxes on it again. Bill Clinton, of course. If Ronald Reagan didn't do it, one thing I've learned since I've been doing this show, especially, talking about a lot of the policies over the last 40, 50 years are the worst policies that have hurt the poor, that have hurt the working class, that have turned us into the corporatocracy that I think that on some level we're going to have to overthrow. On some level, you better believe if Ronald Reagan didn't do it, you better believe Bill Clinton did. So thanks to that Clinton era loophole, their compensation is largely in stock, so they don't have to pay taxes on it. Now, these workers, as I said earlier, they took a huge pay cut during the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. The taxpayers, you bailed these car companies out. And instead of sharing those gains with the workers, record profits with the workers, they put it into juicing the stock so that the executives could get paid more in stock buybacks. It is just disgusting. $365 to 1. That is the CEO to worker pay ratio at Stellantis. 365 to 1. That's how long workers would have to work. Like, they'd have to work for 365 years at the salary that they're at just to make what one of these CEOs make in 1 year. And save every single dollar, of course. At General Motors, it's 362 to 1. And at Ford, let me see right. It's 281 to 1. That is disgusting. At Ford, 281 to 1. I bet you, old boy at Ford is like, hey, it's not as bad as the other places. So, of course, because the Democrats are out here messing around, Donald Trump has said he actually plans to meet with the striking auto workers in Michigan instead of attending the second GOP debate. Now, I think it's a pretty smart thing for him to do, even though I don't think he really gives a doggone about these workers at all. His policies, the National Labor Review Board that he put together while he was in office, certainly didn't appear like he gave a doggone about any workers. But it is smart for him to at least pretend he cares about workers. Let me get this caller. Hello, caller.
Hello. Good afternoon, Scott.
It's all good, brother.
Okay, it's always good to hear you on radio, man.
Well, thank you.
You talk nothing but facts.
You know it.
But now look, I know you mean well the way you calculated what you just did. But I'm telling you, watching that A&I stock, artificial intelligence, and I'm telling you, and watching Amazon, because, you know, everybody missed Amazon. It came out, you know, when Amazon started selling them books when I was in college, like 2008 or 9? Okay. You know, it hit at one time, it went up from like, I don't know, it started off probably about, I don't know, $20-something, but you remember when it hit $5,000 a share?
Really?
Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, Jeff Bezos had, wait a minute, baby. It was $2,000 a share or $5,000. It was about $2,000 a share. But Jeff Bezos, if you Google it, it'll tell you the highest ever been in history. I believe it's 5,000, but it could be 2,000. Okay.
Right.
But anyway, Jeff Bezos, the stock got so high. Remember, he got his group, and they had to split that stock up and bring that stock back down to like maybe $80 or $40. Anyway, they had to split it up. It was too expensive, you know, for everybody. But I'm just getting at this. At $2,000 a share, let's just say you didn't touch your 401k. If somebody go get, because right now, you know, anybody can buy Amazon. A working man can buy the Amazon stock. But let's just say somebody had that 401k and it was up there, and they didn't bother it. It was up there like $200,000 or $300,000. Now just think about what I'm saying. If a person had done that meal for 40-some years and just said, "Well, hey, I'm not doing nothing with this 401k," and go and spend that whole $200,000 up in, I'm gonna just say either A&I or Amazon stock. But we know Amazon is moving. with all that money, with them 200,000, whatever he have in there, he dump it over to Amazon and then make it back up to $2,000 a share. I said if the word, right? I said if. That man would be rich or that woman would be rich.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, you'll have to take that. Well, you know, it's nothing but taking a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I believe if somebody gets the money to do that, that's working out there in that mill now, I really believe they could get rich. Somebody will be rich. But who to say that Amazon stock will make it back up to $2,000 a share?
Right. Right. I heard that.
Huh?
I heard that.
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to make it. But look, I wasn't talking about going to your regular bank account, and I'm not talking about going to your credit union account. I'm talking about that 401k.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, I know. Believe me, somebody can make some money, but they have to have a heart to do. They have to have a. Do you think Amazon stock going in? Do you think Jeff Bezos is going to lose his stock, or you think the stock going anywhere?
No.
That stock will be there, just like A&I going to be there. That's all I'm getting at.
All right, now. I heard that. Thank you for your call, brother.
Okay, good man.
All right. Yeah, Jeff Bezos gonna make sure he getting paid. I think he's at officially he's at about 300 billion right now. Him and Elon Musk no, he's at 150 officially. I think Elon Musk could get going towards 300 officially, just officially. So I mean, it is important that in this war with big capital against labor, it's important that we support the workers here. 75% of the American public does. 75% of the public does. Strangely enough, a lot of Republicans don't. That could cost them a lot. I mean, I just saw Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, who, is like the Republicans' little black mascot. They came out, oh, these workers, oh my God, I can't believe how entitled these workers are. 75% of the public supports the workers. These politicians work for their donors. They do not work for you. That's why it is so important to blow a gaping hole in the two-party duopoly. Well, all right, folks, it is 6:43 already. Ooh, I've been going off, apparently. We got to go to our very first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the crisis at the border. Oh, man. Oh, sookie now.